Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Join us every weekday at this time to discuss news, spend time in the Word, and receive answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. It's Monday. It's a new day. It's a new series. It's a new into a new month, November. We're in the second
I am
week in
so
November.
excited about where we're going with this new series. I think it's going to be just phenomenal.
Yeah, we've gone through a couple of things over the course of our podcasting that are still up there, by the way, and people can go back, and I know people do. I've got a person that actually I'm discipling that been teaching about abiding, and he said he wanted to go back and go through the individual podcasts to deepen his understanding of abiding. So he's going back.
I've sent some people back to the beginning as well.
So it's going as well. But we're going to do a series here on overcoming worry, fear, and anxiety. And it really is cool how it came about. Interesting enough, about 6 months ago, as God has me into abiding and receiving, he told me exactly this. He said, I need you to answer the question. Help me, let me show you the answer to the question this worldwide, and that is fear, worry, and anxiety. And it's getting what I would call endemic, in the sense of not just typical, I have a few concerns. It's getting severe, and we'll talk about that. So I've been developing material, and my abiding is I think I described it as I've learned, and I find great joy now in learning this, because this isn't my style, is he's going to give me pieces, puzzle pieces. And it kind of goes up there, but don't try to connect the dot, Rich, and wait until I say you have now the pieces. Now I'm going to connect the dots and kind of connect them all for you. So I've been doing that. Well, last week, he said, you have all the pieces. Let me start connecting the dots. So you and I were talking about, okay, what's next? And we've got 22 different topics. So we're going to have fun over the next decade doing this stuff together. And we were talking about a couple things, and you said, well, one thing that's come up, with your people input to you is this aspect of, worry, fear, and anxiety. Maybe we could do a couple sessions on that. And I said, well, actually, funny, but God already has given me this, and so we're gonna together, actually with you, the audience, work through the connecting of the dots. That this is one that I don't have completed per se. I've got all the material. I've got all and I understand it all, and I've received it all. I just need to see how he wants to sequence it and express the truth of this. And so Kathy and I are going to start this, and so that's hard to describe this, but that's the beauty of God's will,
right?
Is we don't have to figure anything out. It's just, well, we have a heart to, what would you have us do next? And quite frankly, neither one of us, and I certainly wasn't thinking, well, that's the next thing.
No.
But you said something, and hey, by the way, and God said, do you see what I'm doing? Yes, I do.
Right.
I'm guiding you into my will, and see, you and I, well, this ought to be interesting, and
it's going to be a fun adventure, right?
Exciting, and so we're very excited about it, and we'll talk about the reasons. Everybody can say, I can understand this.
Yeah. Let me just point out something, if you don't mind. The beauty of the way God has done this, so many of these, Rich has so many courses and so many of them are online and they are just a gift to all of us. But what I think super cool about the way that God has formed this particular one or is forming this one is honestly to be doing it real time with us right now.
Yeah.
And in that, I truly believe that he's going to be inviting our listeners and prompting them to send in questions and to be interactive in the process of him bringing this together. And we're going to see this whole curriculum form around the things that he lays both on our hearts through the Spirit, but also through our listeners as it begins to get unpacked. And I think that's going to be really a magnificent thing to watch happen.
Yeah, I got that as I was working on the material just for this broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
He said exactly what you just said. He said the listeners are going to send in questions of real
Mm-hmm.
questions they
Yes.
have. He says my forming the connecting of the dots is going to answer their questions. So
Yes.
so right now we're encouraging you, and just let me put it up to at least get used to it. And we really would like you to send in statements, questions.
Yeah.
You're
I think
gonna
that's a vital part of this one.
you're gonna actually help shape this material, which by
Mm-hmm.
the way we will turn into a retreat and into a curriculum course. So
Yep.
uh, you'll be part of it. But send us on the YouTube and comments section or email us at questions@afjministry.com, questions@afjministry.com, and we will use that. And God said He
Mm-hmm.
actually wants to use that to facilitate understanding this, because it's going to be interesting enough. Worry, fear, and anxiety is real,
Mm-hmm.
and see, it's not generic. It's always about personal, real stuff
Right.
in my life, and this is why I have fear, anxiety, and worry. And that's what we want you to share is, okay, what's going on? What are you sensing? What are the things you do in it? And then we'll talk about, God's remedy for that. And one thing that is true, and it's been true throughout all that I've received, is he said it's always based on, and this is why we did the first two things already, which is abiding and discerning God's will. It's
Mm-hmm.
always on the relationship. The answer to this is always in the relationship of
Mm-hmm.
abiding. Remember, abiding isn't a program.
Right.
And there's things to do in the Word, and we talked about journaling and scripture memory and cross-referencing, and all that's really important and critical, because without the Word and getting into the Word, you're not going to be able to have this relationship. But it's 24/7 connected to
Mm-hmm.
God as He now works through what He has to speak to you and give you His answers, which is why we did
Mm-hmm.
discerning God's will. Is that I'm learning to abide, I'm learning to walk with Him in this beautiful, healthy, joyful relationship. It's not weird. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of strange stuff that goes on. It's a beautiful life of God that has for you. And the way I try to portray it is the Gospels give us great illustration of the life with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at the disciples and their relationship with Christ, and you don't see anything strange about it. You don't see
Right.
techniques of you got to do this or do that. Matter of fact, Jesus kept
It was just
speaking.
being.
Yeah, just being together, and he actually spoke against, don't let this drift into a system. And so when we
Mm-hmm.
talk about abiding, think about the beautiful relationship that the disciples had with Christ. That's what abiding looks like. They
Mm-hmm.
were talking about the Word. They were processing truth, questions. He was challenging them. I think he was quite funny, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a walk with them in a very healthy, beautiful way. And that's what abiding is. And that's at the base of it all. And I know, Kathy, you just did a retreat and had somebody that reflected, a longtime Christian that reflected something about that I thought would be healthy for all of us to hear, the difference between study and what it means to walk with God. And maybe you could share that with what that person wrote to you.
Yeah, I'll just read her text because it's just so precious. It says, I've been for 40 years. I loved God with my whole heart and longed to serve him and be obedient. In the past couple of years, however, I felt I was running in place, trying to meet him where he was, but unable to find all of him. It's like I could see glimpses of his glory and knew right around the corner his glory was there shining brightly, but it was just out of reach. Until now, abiding has been such a gift, Kathy. I just tell him how much I love you and how grateful I am so often, but it would get creepy if I told you all the time. But I hope you know, I just don't have the words to thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I received that and I was just like, that's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
It's such a gift to be able to bring people to his feet and teach them to abide.
Yeah.
And the difference in knowing about someone and walking intimately is huge.
Yeah. And so our heart, and I rejoice, that person could kind of speak that clearly. The
Mhm.
difference is our heart is the joy of letting him be the king and walking in his
Mhm.
kingdom. And he loves us so much that he cares so much about us that he intimately gets involved with us, and his joy is with us so that he can lead us into life. Remember, I'm come to give you life and give it to you super abundantly.
Mhm.
And it always, by definition, includes the stuff of our life, the circumstances of our life. It's real. And what
Mhm.
she just expressed is, as opposed to approaching it, from a distance,
Mhm.
the difference is now I can enjoy and live out the beautiful life of God. So we just want to encourage everybody to remember it's about abiding. There's no system to it. It's walking with him through the word and understanding what it
Mhm.
means, and then discerning his will. And then as we go into this topic of worry, fear, and anxiety, um, the issue is our stuff. Is I got I got problems with my stuff, and it seems to me that it probably isn't going to work out, and then that causes you to go into worry, fear, and anxiety. So we'll talk more in depth about that, but let's start with kind of a statement that Jesus actually made himself. John 14, 27. He makes a statement about this, and go ahead and read that. John 14, 27.
Sure. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid.
Yeah. So he basically says, the world is going to cause you trouble
Mm-hmm.
and fear,
Yeah.
and because of that, he said we have to walk together so that you don't let your heart move to that place. In other
Right.
words, and by the way, fear and trouble, it isn't that, and this is what we get stuck with is, well, why don't you just get rid of it all? So I never have a problem with trouble and fear because there's nothing to be afraid of, or there's nothing
Right.
nothing to be experiencing trouble with. He said, no, remember the world, and the world is that, and fear and responding to trouble is actually really healthy, and we'll talk
Mm-hmm.
about the element of that. What becomes unhealthy is that it takes you from there's something here that I need to go process with God about, and what happens is, well, you try to do it and you try to resolve it, and it doesn't get resolved, and then your
Mm-hmm.
conclusions are, boy, this could be bad or stay bad, and now it dominates you. So when he says don't let your heart be troubled or let it be afraid, he's saying don't let your life be dominated by the worry and anxiety of trouble or fear of what's happening in your life. And he says, I got to show you what it means for me to give you my shalom, my peace, that will be different than that, because it's not like the world.
Right.
It's going to be a spiritual thing, which is what we have to identify with.
Yeah.
Uh,
I read a quote earlier today that encapsulates what you're saying, actually. It's from Neil Anderson, and it says, the peace of God is internal, not external.
hmm,
Peace with God is something you already have. See Romans 5:1. But the peace of God is something you need to appropriate daily in your inner world. That's the abiding in the midst of the storms that rage on in the external world.
wow.
And I thought that really summarizes it well, right?
It kind of does, yeah. Externally, we're going to have it, but peace is internal, which means we got to have a connectivity between, okay, how do I have that peace that is spiritual and internal with an external problem, and how do I view that? And again, we look at, a lot of people say, well, just trust God. And I think there's where the heaviness is coming, is your church says, and your Christian friends say, trust God, trust God, trust God. Come on,
Right.
trust God. And you don't really understand, well, how do I do that? And I can say, okay, I'm going to trust God. And what do you
Right.
do? God take care of it. It doesn't get taken care of. And
Well, and
then,
in fact, then when we sit and we're still experiencing fear or anxiety in the middle of it, we feel like a failure.
right.
We're failing to trust God
Yeah.
instead of, so there's a lot that gets worn in that package.
Yeah, because remember, the enemy is trying to move us to, first of all, don't experience the abundant life because you're walking in the flesh, not in the spirit. Then you get anxious about it. Then you try to fix it, make it worse. You're supposed to trust God, and you realize you're not, and you feel even worse about that.
And
So
it's a spiral.
it's a spiral to eventually what it leads to is what we call resignation or oppression or heaviness, which in today's parlance can be, and you made the statement as you and I were talking about it, is panic attack, to where I am so overwhelmed by it. And I'm so stuck by it that I'm under a attack of panic, and my mind is racing, my heart is racing, and I'm completely shut down.
Right. And there becomes a physical manifestation of what's going on spiritually.
Yes. Or depression. And depression is, I give up. This will never get resolved, and I guess I have no alternatives. Which basically, depression is a lack of perceived alternatives. That, well, there's nothing left, and I guess I go. And so, what's happening in our life right now, and of course we illustrate this in our End Times Fridays, is the world is getting crazier and crazier and crazier, and less predictable, and more oppressive, and economic issues and cultural issues, and unbelievable decisions that my kids got to deal with in school, and it's getting crazier and crazier and crazier. So that the causes of it, as I see it, are going to get worse and worse and worse.
Right.
And the opportunity to stay in anxiety, fear, and worry is getting greater. And what I'm sensing, and I think this is why God is asking us to do this, is He says, my children are really stuck in this, and they're really don't understand, which is why we've had people say, well, how do we get out of this?
Right.
I know I'm supposed to get out of it, but I don't know how to get out of this.
And we really have seen, COVID has presented that exactly what you're saying and brought it right to the forefront, because truly, if you look in the schools, they're saying statistically the number of teenagers, actually children even, that are experiencing significant anxiety now has greatly increased over the past year and a half, 2 years now, as we've walked through all of this, to the point even I have friends who are family counselors, and they said, they're turning away. They cannot keep up with the amount of people coming to them, Christian counselors coming to them for help to navigate anxiety and depression in kids, especially, but across the board.
Yeah.
And so just the increase in what has gone on in the world. And so this is a timely study to really press in and see what God has to say and how He wants to restore and redeem this.
Yep. And again, we urge you to send in your questions that help us frame up the things we'd like to make this course, which is going to kind of be developed along with you, literally week by week, is what are the things that you would like to have answered, and why, and what's going on with you. And so we're gonna make this really as real as we can, which I think is a cool way that God's going to do in it. So as we look at these questions, these are the things we are gonna get into and answer throughout the time together. Is what really is worry, fear, and anxiety, and why is it so difficult to seem to overcome it? And we're always constantly living in turmoil. And I know a lot of believers are living in turmoil, and they'd like to get out of it, but they don't know how. What is the source of us experiencing worry, fear, and anxiety? Is it just demonic? Is it sinful nature? Is this God actually doing testing of our faith? What exactly is all this? Does God have us stay in spiritual battle and uses worry, fear, and anxiety as a way of staying in the battle, even though we are wanting to fight the battle in faith? How does that all look? And is God using it for supposedly teaching us something and using something about it to fight the enemy? A lot of confusion about that. Subpoints around the enemy. Does Satan hear our thoughts and influence our thoughts, which is an interesting question. Does Satan use what we speak verbally against us, especially when we attempt to pray against him openly? So I think that's always an interesting one is, well, if Satan's out there and he's hearing what we're doing, wanting to do, isn't that something that's, against us? And shouldn't we be more covert about it?
Sneaky.
So it's really an interesting question. Why is we in a battle at all? Since God is all powerful and His ways are for us to live in peace, then why aren't we living in peace? So what's up with that? And then what is the reason we tend to drift into and stay in worry, fear, and anxiety? Even though I might have times where I'm not, but I tend to drift into it and then stay there. And by the way, now I think it's getting more and more severe. As we've described it, with panic attacks and oppression and heaviness and resignation and the issues of life, which is why a lot of people are saying, I know I'm not supposed to, but I have it, and I don't know how to move out of it. And I need some help on that. So this is what we're going to try to answer for you. As we go into this first part of it, we're going to look at causes of worry, fear, and anxiety and we'll try to identify what those are and where they're coming from. But we should be able to relate to these. So let's look at the first one. Psalm 127, 1 and 2. Psalm 127, 1 and 2. Go ahead and read that, and then we'll talk about that.
Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sleep.
Yeah. So he talks about vanity. A big cause of anxiety and fear and worry is vanity. Okay, now how would you
explain that word a little more for us so that people understand what you're saying there?
So as we look at vanity, or what he used, vain, it's that there's a lot of activity to accomplish something, but nothing ever gets accomplished. I spent all this time, I spend all this energy working towards something. With always, I expect a result. I expect something positive to come after it, but it turned out to be broken, never could be done, and is worthless. That the word vanity actually means worthless. You chase worthless things, and he says you rise up early and go to bed late. In vanity, trying to fulfill something that you actually can't.
Right.
But you keep trying. Why? Okay, because there's a overdependence and a reliance on me and my skill, and I think I can do this. I think I can get this done. I just got to figure it out. And he who builds a house, or is a watchman, can do it in vain. And so, what does that look like? I don't know if you've seen, on HGTV has all these shows about home restoration.
Remodeling. Yep.
And there's a new one out that's called Help, I've ruined my house.
Oh no.
Uh, and what they do is this lady is called in to usually a couple that
Mm-hmm.
attempted to remodel their own house.
Mm-hmm.
And they tell the story. And we tried and we tried and we tried. We did this, we did this, we did this. And of course, then they bring the camera in and it's a complete disaster. And she says, and she sits there, yeah, I can see why it wound up there. And in essence, her conclusion is everything you've done is vanity.
Mm-hmm.
You worked and 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 you tried and you tried and you tried and you tried to figure all this out. And literally, not only did you not accomplish anything, you made it worse.
Right. Well, really, doesn't that goes right with John 15:5, one of our key verses, that apart from God, we can do nothing.
Right.
We're not going to produce fruit on our own. It's got to be with him and him leading.
That's right. So vanity is chasing what you think is needed to fulfill something for you, but the truth is it never can be. And he said that's all vanity, and basically, why would you keep doing it when you realize that it never produced anything?
Right.
Well, interesting enough, because we're so dependent on self, is we chase it ourselves, and that's why, by the way, we can say, well, that person's a vain. What does it mean? A person's vain is they
Right.
don't
Self-focused.
they're so self-focused. They never consider truth at all. And they keep getting harmed, but they're vain because everything is filtered through themselves. So he says vanity is a big cause of that, because we are trying to chase something, accomplish something, but we're not getting anywhere. But vanity says, I can still try to do this, and you try and you try and you don't, you try and you don't. Okay, the next one, which is a really simple one, is Matthew 6:24.
Says, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money.
Okay. Well,
that's pretty clear.
That can't be, now, by the way, and this is interesting, it says you cannot. And the word there is not possible, impossible to both serve God and money. Okay. Guess what? Most Christians try to do that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a Christian. Yes. Yeah. I know God. I trust God. I'm a Christian. I go to church. And I'm going to, quote, serve God by what? Going to church and saying I'm a Christian and trying to be good. But what do? I'm chasing money as my focus in life.
And even as our security.
And what it does is it dictates all of your decisions, so that you don't consider anything else other than what's the financial impact of this thing, or why would you spend an inordinate amount of hours working in your business, either as an employee, as a manager, as a owner. Why do you spend an inordinate amount of time? Well, because I need to make more money, and have more money, so that we can create safety and we can have things that we like, etc. And John D. Rockefeller. This is, the quote is now, I think, going 100 years old, but when he was at the height of, in essence, the equivalent of the richest person on earth, which would, in our time, would be like a Bill Gates or a Jeff Bezos, who are billionaires, what we call billionaires. He would have been considered a billionaire. He was a multimillionaire, but at that time it would be equivalent to a billionaire. How much money do you need? Guess what his answer was?
More.
a little bit more. A little bit more.
Right.
Why? Well, because there's a chasing of the sense that financially, it's better if you have more than less. And so what do? I got to keep getting more. And then you realize, well, yeah, okay, but I need a little bit more. And so
Mm-hmm.
greed,
No matter where you're
no
at,
matter where
right?
you are, and so it's not about poverty to not poverty. It's really where's your heart at. Is
Mm-hmm.
everything I do is geared toward greed. And remember, we attribute greed to the very, very wealthy, and they're
Mm-hmm.
greedy. No, it's a heart issue of I chase money as my primary focus, because he said you can't serve
Right.
God and money at the same time. And
Well, and
and
I
what
think part of that too is even that money, the increase of money gives us the perception of the increase of control.
yes.
And I think that, and especially when you're looking at it in the context of worry and fear and anxiety, that seems like something that can help us to control our circumstances. And I think that's why it wars so much with us in this realm.
Right, right. Okay, the next one is interesting one. We know this verse, but let's put it in context of what this means for fear, anxiety. Matthew 6:25-32.
But therefore, I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And which of you, being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field and how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is alive and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore, do not be anxious, saying, what shall we eat, and what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the Gentiles seek after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them all.
Yeah. So he's describing, he's using, the fundamentals, eat, drink, clothing.
Mm-hmm.
He says, why are you anxious about that?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you worried about that? The Gentiles, and remember, the context here is people that aren't following me. Well, that's what they're focused on. And
Mm-hmm.
he's not talking about at his purest level, well, pursuing things that give you normal living,
Mm-hmm.
food, shelter, clothing. Yeah, he said it's important to to consider that and to make that. He said what he's talking about is that you're focused on all of your personal life choices. Because
Mm-hmm.
he uses the word, why are you anxious about that? Why are you worried about that? Is I have to provide it and make
Mm-hmm.
sure that my life choices relative to the stuff in my life, that I am troubled and anxious about it because I've got to figure this out
Mm-hmm.
and go get it and make it happen myself. And what I'm saying there is the focus is on me making life choices about everything that I'm involved with at every level. And he says,
Mm-hmm.
why would you be so anxious about that? Um, I know what's going on. And of course, we're going to find the answer, as he said. Well, why don't you let me give it to you, deliver it to you, and then you won't be anxious about it. So, again, we've learned about vanity, greed, focus on life choices. This next one is interesting. Luke 10:38-41. This is the story of Mary and Martha, and it has an interesting statement. Luke 10:38-41.
Oops, hang on just a second. I think my notes got a little bit out of order there.
Yeah, Luke 10, 38-41.
Let me just look that one up. I apologize.
Yeah, it's okay. It's the story of Mary and Martha with Jesus. They were in Bethany, and Jesus had already known them, and they'd already understood him at their limited view of being Christ the Messiah. Their brother was Lazarus, as we know what happened to him. And he often would go back and forth between Galilee and Jerusalem. Bethany was just outside Jerusalem, so he would stop there and he actually would stay with them. And his disciples, like in this case, the disciples have been sent ahead into Jerusalem. So you guys go, and there's some preparation there, and go take care of a few things. I'm going to stay here with Mary and Martha. So he's at the house of Mary and Martha, who they know Jesus as Christ Messiah. Now, there's again a limited view of that, but that's what they understand. That yep, you're the Son of God at that level. Go ahead, you
Great.
got that.
Because now, as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she went up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah, and then he goes on to explain some things, but he makes a statement. Well, you're anxious and troubled, by many things. You're basically distracted. If we ask Martha, what are you doing? What would she say?
She was doing good things. She was getting things ready to serve him,
Yeah.
preparing food. She was hosting. She's making things ready for him.
I'm serving Christ. Isn't that a good idea? Matter of fact, she thought it was such a good idea. She says to Mary, get up and help me.
Right. And can't you make her do that?
Yeah. Well, Mary says, no, no, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna sit here with Jesus. And so Martha says to Jesus, make Mary get up and help me. Why? Because I believe what I'm doing is the right thing. And Jesus says, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled by many things. You're distracted. And the phraseology there of the Greek is, Martha, you, in your mind, think you're serving me and pleasing me. Really, you're pleasing yourself. Why? Well, because your self-image, your view of you is, for me, God, Jesus speaking, to approve of you by your work for me. And your focus is on pleasing me. And then you're worried about the details of that and all the preparations of that. And you're focused on that completely. And then he attributes, what does that result in? Worry,
right?
And anxiety. Why are you anxious and worried about this stuff? In other words, your focus is on pleasing others and on trying to appear important, and you're focused on getting that approval by you appearing important by doing all these things.
And there's a level of performance there, a performance for approval.
Right. And what you're thinking about, Martha, is you're worried that this isn't exactly perfect. You got to be better. You got to be better. And you're worried and anxious about many things, because that's your focus, is the many things, and it's got to be so that you feel important in the process, so that the is there any, and what he's trying to say to Martha, are you relaxed about even that? Are you even relaxed in that? See, you're not. You're churning. You're worried. You're anxious. You're fighting these things inside of you, and therefore performing things that you think is a good idea, but actually it's causing you to be in turmoil. So we'll talk about that as we get into that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good one to hit on for sure.
This next one is interesting. It's out of Jeremiah 17, 5-6. Jeremiah 17, 5-6.
Thus says the Lord, cursed is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his strength, whose heart turns away from the Lord. He is like a shrub in the desert and shall not see any good come. He shall dwell in the parched places of the wilderness, in an uninhabited salt land.
So he says, cursed are you that is basically focusing on your own abilities, and you're experiencing frustration due to failure and difficulty, which is you're contributing to making it worse because your focus is on self. And he says, cursed is a man who focuses on your own capabilities. He said, what does it wind up being? a dried up shrub in the desert. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, there's nothing there. Everything completely
Right.
ruined. All of your effort winds up with ruin and
Mm-hmm.
loss and things that are not fruitful, and therefore lots of discouragement is because of it. Why? Because you were focused on your own ability to get things figured out, and guess what? It wound up in great failure. I mean, great failure.
Mm-hmm.
And now you go into a place of fear and anxiety and worry because now not only did you not fulfill what you thought you could do, but it got worse.
Mm-hmm.
And now you don't even know what to do, which, by the way, leads to more fear and anxiety and worry because what do I do now? I can't. I've already made a mess of this. How am I gonna fix this? So
Right.
he said it's really a significant thing. And then the next one is this aspect of fear. And go to 1 Samuel 17, 1 to 11. This is Saul and David and Goliath. So 1 Samuel 17, 1 to 11.
Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and they were gathered at Socoh, which belongs to Judah, and encamped between Socoh and Ezekah and in Ephes Dammon. This that's a lot to
That's
blah. And
they were in all,
Saul,
all these different places.
yes. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered and encamped in the valley of Elah and drew up in line of battle against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, with a valley between them. And there came out from the camp a Philistine, a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of a spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and his shield bearer went before him. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistines said, "I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistines, they were dismayed and greatly afraid.
Yeah. So again, the way that the battle is, we're going to come and come against you. So the Philistines are
Mm-hmm.
coming against Israel. We're in your land. You need to come meet us for battle.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of interesting. They literally would send messengers.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to send messengers to Saul in Jerusalem. Hey, we're gonna meet you down in there in Gedi here, and bring your army. We got our army. We're going to battle. And okay, so all right, boys, we got to get ready and go down there. And they do. They go down. Now it's kind of in a sense, it's if you don't do this, we're coming after you,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna completely annihilate you because you won't even be ready for war. So there
Right.
was it was a semi honorable way to do war. Is that well, we're coming after you, and why don't you get all of your guys together and meet us at this place, and we'll send up.
Mm-hmm.
We'll come against you. Remember, it talks about a line. They'd
Right.
literally line up. We're coming against you. You line up against us. Um, so the Philistines already are bigger than them, more powerful than them. But Saul says, "Okay, I got to do that because if I don't, they're going to come and capture us anyway." Goliath, representing the Philistines, says, "You know what? Instead of us killing everybody, why don't we just have one guy? We
Mm-hmm.
got the Goliath. By the way, he's like almost 8.5 feet tall, 9 foot tall, huge, big guy, massive and strong.
Yeah.
You send somebody. Let's those two
Right.
fight.
You send your best, I'll send
I'll send my
mine.
best, and whoever wins, then the other party would surrender to,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll just avoid all this killing." And so he says, "I defy. Go ahead and find somebody and come against me." Otherwise, by the way, we'll just overrun you anyway. So, and this is basically why they did this. You're going to get killed. And we can avoid killing some of our people and avoid all this if we just do it this way.
Right.
Okay, and what was in verse 11, what was Saul's response?
He was afraid.
Yeah.
Very fearful.
Very fearful and dismayed, because in his mind, he knew there's no way we can win this. And as far as I can see, this circumstance that truly is against me, I'm in great fear. It's deep fear, anxiety, worry, and dismay is there's no way this is going to win, and so.
And it's bigger than what he can see his way out of.
Yeah. So as we look at that, that's what causes a lot of fear. And again, the fear itself isn't bad. It's about the depth of it and where does it go? Does it go to dismay? Is that, and basically the conclusion is this will never get resolved. And we're in trouble, and I can't see my way out of trouble, and I'm afraid of the outcome. It looks like it's going to be really, really bad. In this case, it looks like we're going to get defeated, and we're going to have to surrender and no longer be Israel. We'll be part of the Philistines, and that's not a good idea. So, fear is that I've concluded. When I take fear to dismay, fear. We'll talk about fear itself is not a bad idea. Just like anger isn't sin, fear isn't sin. It's what happens to it. When it goes to dismay and I quit and I get overwhelmed by it, it's because I've concluded, as far as I can see, the outcomes are not going to be good at all, and I'm stuck with that outcome, and it looks like it's going to be bad. So I go to fear. So we've talked through a few. We'll continue next time talking about a few more. But we've
as we wrap up, can you recap just the few? I know there's several more that we'll hit on, but can you recap some of the sources that you shared today? Just kind of.
So we talked about a vanity. I can figure this out, but I'm not. Greed. I'm chasing money, and I keep pursuing things that I just need more, and I spend all my time doing that. I'm focusing on my life choices, all the things related to. I'm trying to figure this out. And I'm focusing on that as opposed to enjoying it. I'm distracted by pleasing others and appearing important and all the activity with that. I'm focusing on my own capabilities, and I'm causing things more difficult, and they're drying up and they're not working. And then fear is this is not going to work. So we can see that, I can relate to some of those. And we'll get into a few more next week, and then we'll start talking about the real causes behind this. And then, of course, bringing remedy, which what God wants to bring is, I want to help you overcome this. And there's going to be a process to that. So we'll pick that up again next tomorrow. We're excited about this series that we've started, and we're not afraid of technology problems. God will take care of it, and we have people that help us. So we'll do that. So Kathy, we will see you tomorrow. I encourage you to send in your questions again. We're going to do this together, and this will be quite fun.
Yeah, this is going to be a great series, guys. So join us on this, and let's see where God takes it all. I think it's just so timely for us. So thanks for sharing, and have a great afternoon, everyone. And again, be a friend, tell a friend, and invite people to join us, especially on this one. I think it's going to be excellent.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. All right, see you tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.